Everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Ken Levinson. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington International Trade Association. It's a great privilege for us today to welcome the Honorable David Davis, the Honorable Owen Patterson, Shankar Singham, and Tim Keeler for remarks and a discussion today. For those of you who don't know WITA, we are the membership association for the Washington trade community. We have nearly 3,000 members in Washington, a vibrant mix of U.S. government officials in Congress and the administration, embassy officials, corporate officials, think tanks, academics, consultants, lawyers, lobbyists. We're an all-comers organization, and we're very pleased to have Mr. Davis here today. The format today will be Mr. Davis will give some remarks from the podium. When he's done, he'll be joined on stage by the other panelists. One other quick note about WITA, you should all be hearing information about our first ever International Trade Conference. That'll be held next January 29th, 2019 here at the Reagan Building. It's going to be an all-day affair with plenary sessions, speeches, breakout sessions, lunch, and a reception to close. You'll see some information on your tables with information about the conference. We hope you will all join us there. We'll hope you will consider sponsoring the conference. It'd be great to have your support. With that, I'm going to make a brief introduction of the Right Honorable David Davis, who has represented, I hope I pronounced these names right, Halton Price and Howden in Parliament since 1997, and was MP for the Booth Ferry constituency before that. In the last Conservative government, he held the position of Foreign Office Minister. He has served as an Assistant Whip, a Minister of State, Shadow Lord, Chancellor, and Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, if I have this right, Secretary of State of the Home Office, and he was recently the former Secretary of State for exiting the European Union from 2016 to 2018. With that, I'll turn the stage over to David Davis. Thank you, sir.
My successor in the job of Secretary of State for exiting the European Union resigned yesterday. I think I'm the former Secretary of State. And I hope you appreciate how we've laid on the, as it were, the off-stage entertainment back in England for you in terms of the political scene. But let me start by saying I'm really pleased to be here in the United States, a country that has so much in common with my own. From our values and commitment to the rule of law, protection of property rights, to free people's trading in free markets around the world, all of these are fundamental beliefs of both our countries, and they join us together. I'm sure you've had many British ministers here over the decades who made such speeches. But, ladies and gentlemen, we're in a time of great change. While my country has voted to leave the European Union and embrace a more global outlook, there is an existential battle going on in the world. It's a battle of ideas between competition-led capitalism and state-led capitalism, between competition and cronyism. The tide of prescriptive approaches to economic governance, as exemplified by countries like China, has washed across the shores of Europe. This battle is no less real than other wars that we fought together before. But of course, this time the enemy is not Europe. Our enemy is poverty and the destruction of wealth. Poverty and the destruction of wealth. I believe that wealth can be created or destroyed. I believe it's more difficult to create than it is to destroy. And I believe that competition is the greatest force that mankind may wield in wealth creation. It's competition of free people competing on the quality of their ideas that's the greatest engine of wealth creation. It's competition has lifted billions out of poverty. I often say, talking to audiences in the United Kingdom, I often ask, particularly young audiences, what's the greatest invention that has saved the lives of the most people in the last few decades? And I get back answers like penicillin, all sorts of technical scientific answers. But of course the real answer is free trade, which has raised so many people out of poverty in the last few decades. On the other hand, it's cronyism, protectionism, over-regulation that's destroyed wealth and pushed people deeper and deeper into poverty. The UK and US have always promoted competition on the merits, that great aspirational principle. They're the heart of the American dream as well as the British one, that your children can have a life better than yours. I'm proud to stand here in a country that's put into practice so much of British philosophy. From Adam Smith and John Locke to David Ricardo, from the Magna Carta to the Industrial Revolution, you have taken these ideas, forged in the fires of competition, and made them reality. You've been that shining example for the rest of the world. I hope you will permit me to say we played some small role in your success. But now we're joined in a mutual struggle. A struggle to show to the world, that where competition is weakened or crushed, where governments replace what the private sector can do, it is the people who lose out most. And the poorest amongst us are the ones who are hurt most of all. The battlefield for this struggle is set. If the United States and the United Kingdom can agree a free trade agreement that pulls the United Kingdom out of the European Union's regulatory orbit, then this will be enormously beneficial, not just to us, but to America, to America's farmers, businesses and consumers. We face the same threat as you do of Chinese market distortions. The Chinese have created an overcapacity in supplying the steel sector. Our inability to deal with these distortions has caused people in our country, quite rightly, to question the whole concept of trade liberalisation and its capacity to lift people out of poverty and create wealth. Hence, we're embarked on a programme of ever greater regulation and an ever weakened private sector. We must reverse this process, and we can. Our new independent trade policy will be built on 4 fundamental pillars, which reflect what we can do unilaterally, bilaterally, plurilaterally, and in the WTO. Part of the bilateral agenda is an agreement between the United Kingdom and the US, while we're also negotiating an agreement between the EU and the UK. Now you might say, and your trade officials might say, we'll wait and see what your agreement is with the European Union before we proceed with you. That would seem logical at one level. I know America understands that we'll be able to sign deals on implementation period, which will begin when we leave the EU in March of next year. But I'm here to say you should not wait for our negotiation with the EU to conclude and then sign a deal with us. If our negotiations with you and the European Union are not concurrent, we may be forced into the regulatory orbit of the European Union. This will result in no serious trade deal being struck between us. And if that occurs, the United States will lose a significant opportunity. Let me explain why the US-UK deal is so important to both us and you. First, you have said clearly in trade fora that you're not protectionist, and I don't believe that you are. I believe the US has been one of the strongest forces for liberalised trade on the planet. A deal with the UK is a deal with a country at a similar socio-economic level. It would mean no race to the bottom on standards, and it would not mean the offshoring of the United States jobs. It would mean a balanced trade relationship between partners. We are the ideal candidate for your bilateral agenda. Indeed, if I may go off script for a second, I sometimes think that we rig our numbers to make that look even better than it is, because you will notice that we're the only 2 countries in the world that seem to have a surplus with each other. Second, moving a significant European power from the European Union's prescriptive rulebook approach to a more outcome, effects-based system, one based on our common approaches in law and economics, would be a significant win, a very significant win. Your industries have long complained about the EU's regulatory system, standard-setting practices, and its ferocious application of the precautionary principle. These things have held back innovation for us in the UK, and we must now break free out of it. Third, we're both affected by the anti-competitive market distortions in China and other places, and by the actions of state-owned enterprises. We can, do in our agreement, what had been the hope in TTIP, a 21st century set of disciplines that could be applied to third parties. We do wish you well in your negotiations with the European Union. You must, however, determine whether you think the deal you wish to negotiate, one that lessens distortions and eliminates red tape and unnecessary bureaucracy, is easier with them than it would be with us. The fact that we'll both be negotiating with them at the same time will help us both to reach a better understanding with the European Union. Fourth, we have shared geostrategic and geopolitical interests in sectors like defence, financial services and pharmaceuticals, where our industries form part of an integrated global whole. Broadening that market and becoming a rule setter for the world, not a rule taker, will be most important. Together, we can push back on the tide that threatens to swamp the wealth creation efforts that have lifted so many out of poverty in the post-war period. We have a unique opportunity to use our partnership to promote wealth creation, lift people around the world out of poverty, and make real a world of opportunity and hope. For too long, the United Kingdom has languished, unable to play the full partner role that you have needed to make this case around the world. No longer. We are ready to take up our sword and fight for what's right, but we need your help to emerge as a full WTO member and partner unhindered in our pursuit of our joint interests. We need your help to ensure we break free of too close a regulatory orbit with the European Union. At which point, I think it would be helpful if I update you on developments in the United Kingdom. The British people voted to take back control of money, borders and laws in the 2016 referendum. The proposed deal between the UK and the EU does not deliver that, and therefore does not deliver for the 17.4 million people that voted for Brexit in that year. And by the way, just so you know, 17.4 million probably doesn't sound a great number in the United States context. It is the largest vote for any single democratic issue in the history of the United Kingdom. And so it is an enormous mandate for the country. Now, at the moment, it's not a deal. What's up? I don't mind noises off. I'm used to it in British politics. At the moment, what you're seeing is not a deal, it's a proposal. And I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it passing through Parliament. We have a successful track record in Parliament of working across party lines on ideas of principle, and this will be one of those. I'm afraid a customs union and regulatory alignment and non-regression clauses, the key elements of the proposal that's in front of the British people at the moment, is simply vassalage. It's simply a subordinate status, a subject status, and there is no other description possible because the UK will be subject to EU laws with no democratic say. I'll repeat that. The United Kingdom will be subject to European Union laws with no democratic say, no way of changing them. No self-respecting state would accept this, and I don't think we will either. The very constitutional integrity of our country is at stake. If Northern Ireland, the other proposal, if Northern Ireland is to have a separate regulatory regime, then there will be some form of Irish Sea border. The Prime Minister said that no United Kingdom Prime Minister could vote for that. This is bad for the Union in terms of Northern Ireland and bad for Unionists in Ireland and Scotland. In the Conservative 2017 General Election Manifesto, we promised, as we leave the European Union, we will no longer be members of the Customs Union. Yet now we propose to do that and break our manifesto commitment on that to the British people. Then a common rule book. A common rule book overseen by the European Court of Justice, a facilitated customs arrangement breaking the Conservative Party's 2017 manifesto pledge, and a backstop that threatens the constitutional integrity of the UK, are all beyond the pale. All these things, they're very technical to most of the world, but when you look at them in Britain against the promises that have been made to people, they're all beyond the pale. Now, the UK government now appears to be on the verge of committing the UK to a permanent customs union backstop from which it cannot escape. The backstop would lock the UK into a relationship with the European Union from which the UK could not escape without the permission of the European Union. Imagine that. Imagine your country in an international deal which you could not escape without the permission of another country. So the message I want to give you today is that a binary choice of accepting this unacceptable proposed deal with the EU or dropping out of the EU with no deal is a false choice. There are alternatives available. The issues relating to the Irish border, and I know we have somebody from the Irish Embassy here, the issues relating to the Irish border can be solved with political goodwill and technical solutions. Several specialist research papers offered a way forward, as does the government's own max fact proposal, which they put up last year. Michel Barnier, the European Union's negotiator, initially described these technical proposals, using existing systems, as magical thinking. He originally described it as that. But recently, he spoke of technical solutions to creating an invisible border in the Irish Sea, the very thing that he wanted to do. So if they work for the Irish Sea, they'll work for the Northern Ireland land border. Now, by rejecting the purgatory of the backstop, we can free the United Kingdom to make trade deals with the rest of the world. Leaders of major economies like the USA, Australia, Singapore, India and New Zealand are on record with their commitment to trade with the United Kingdom. Here you of course started down the timetable already for that. Now we want to avoid a disorderly Brexit. Now I'm convinced a Canada plus deal can be negotiated if the UK government rethinks and resets. There is still enough time, and we know because Michel Barnier and Donald Tusk have confirmed that the EU wants to agree an unprecedented free trade arrangement with the UK. The EU understand trade deals and we're willing to use the best-in-class aspects of previous trade deals, such as those concluded by the EU with Japan and Canada. I know from my time as Brexit Secretary that the legal text of such a deal, a Canada plus deal, has already been written inside the government. So the Prime Minister rightly stated that no deal is better than a bad deal. We should remain calm and be prepared to exit with a deal on world trade terms. That's no deal, if necessary. Such an exit is feasible, and over half the UK's global trade is already conducted on world trade terms. It would not be the optimal result, but to be genuinely prepared for such an eventuality strengthens our hand. People should not be swayed by Project Fear, the continual repetition of scare stories, of alarms and excursions about an arrangement with the European Union which is the same as that enjoyed by well over 100 other countries around the world. The WTO protects trade, and over 165 countries trade on those terms, including the EU and the USA. We can then use time set aside for implementation to negotiate a Canada-style deal with the European Union. This is the most important issue facing my country in a generation. Even if the government continues on its present mistaken path and the withdrawal agreement is voted down, the European Union Withdrawal Act, which is already in place, gives the Prime Minister until 21st of January to bring a government statement to the Commons and table a neutral motion. It's now both an international treaty obligation and UK domestic law that the UK will leave the European Union on 29th of March. So as parliamentarians all have a duty to make sure that we get the best deal. We should remember Brexit cannot be stopped other than by Parliament passing new primary legislation. It's now too late for a second referendum before the 29th of March 2019. So if this deal is somehow railroaded through Parliament, I'm actually confident it won't be, but if it were, a whole raft of irreversible consequences will flow from it. This will risk the breakup of the United Kingdom, not just isolating Northern Ireland, but also undermining the Unionist cause in Scotland. The so-called backstop will not actually be a backstop at all, but a foundation for EU ambition to constrain our opportunities and limit our competitiveness. In Brussels, they admit this privately when talking to ambassadors. This proposed deal will contrive to make the customs union inescapable forever and effectively trap the UK to perpetual domination from Brussels. It's a bad deal. The supposed negotiation of the future economic partnership will be deliberately slowed down to take years. The UK's leverage of the £39 billion we're leaving, normally you pay to join a club, we have to leave to leave it, we have to pay to leave it. The UK's leverage of the £39 billion payment will be squandered. The British people voted to take back control over our borders, laws and money. If this deal is agreed, it will be seen as a betrayal of the referendum result. It also breaks firm pledges given in the 2017 Conservative Manifesto. The British people will lose faith in their political leadership, and the democratic consequences will be dire. We've seen this around the world. What happens when democracies lose faith, or democratic peoples lose faith in their democracies? The consequences are always bad. It would be a sad day indeed if the Cabinet failed to recognise their responsibility today and flinch from taking control of this process and demanding proper delivery on the referendum. Parliament will reject this deal. we will then be able to demand a proper free trade deal. Then we can seize the opportunities of forging even closer relationships between our two great nations. In the battle for the heart of the world's operating system, the global regulatory system, if you will, the UK has become the centre of the battlefield. If you act now with determination and the entrepreneurial spirit that's characterised your nation, you can take advantage of this unique opportunity. You can act in this unique moment to have the world's 5th largest economy and 2nd biggest exporter of services push hard for a competition-based trade policy alongside you. Together, as trade partners, we can turn back the tide of anti-competitive laws and regulation around the world and create wealth where previously it has been destroyed. This is a moment in world history which the economic historians will look back on and judge us on. This is the first time a major G7 nation has effectively been freed up to take its own path and create its own path. It's only a G7 nation that has the sorts of beliefs that we share. And it seems to me that when those economic historians look back, I hope they look at our two countries and say they made the most of that. They made a great deal for their own people, but they also made a fantastic deal for the entire world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for your remarks. We're looking forward to having our panel join us.